It was the kind of night that smelled like rain and regret. The streets of Maplewood were half asleep, lit only by flickering street lamps and the occasional hum of passing cars. Somewhere between the echoes of thunder and the whisper of the wind, a story was waiting to begin, a story of love, lies, and the kind of darkness that wears a charming smile. Lena Carter had never been one for danger. She loved quiet mornings, warm coffee, and the sound of her paintbrush moving across canvas. Her world was color, peace, and the soft rhythm of ordinary days. But that night, the one where the rain refused to stop, she met Ethan Ward. She was driving home from her art gallery, half distracted by her thoughts, when she saw him standing by the side of the road. A broken-down car, a soaked suit, a stranger with eyes that looked like secrets. She almost didn't stop, but something about him made her press the brakes. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was the beginning of her undoing. Ethan thanked her in a voice that felt like velvet and danger mixed into one. He said he lived nearby, that his phone had died, that he just needed a ride into town. The ride was quiet, but charged. Every word felt like a spark. Every glance lingered longer than it should have. And when they reached his hotel, he smiled that kind of smile that says, "You'll remember me." And she did. The next morning, Lena couldn't focus. She kept seeing his face, the sharp jawline, the rain-drenched hair, the way he'd looked at her like he already knew her. And then, as if the universe was listening, he walked into her gallery that afternoon. He said he wanted to buy one of her paintings, the one she'd made years ago, inspired by a dream she could never forget. A dream about a man standing by a lake, watching her. When he said that painting reminded him of home, she froze, because she'd never told anyone what that painting meant. But Ethan smiled, paid in cash, and left her with a simple line. "I think we've met before, Lena." That night, Lena dreamed again, of the lake, the fog, and the same eyes watching her from across the shore. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan became a quiet rhythm in Lena's life. He'd show up at her gallery with coffee, talk about art, books, and sometimes about nothing at all. There was a comfort in him, the kind that sneaks up on you, making you forget to ask the right questions. He was different, or so she thought. He never spoke much about his past. He said he traveled for work, mostly between states, helping renovate old estates, though he never mentioned where. He didn't have social media, didn't like pictures, and every time she tried to learn more, he'd just smile and change the subject. But Lena didn't press. Maybe she didn't want to. Because for the first time since her mother's death, she felt alive again. The gallery began to thrive. Ethan's charm seemed to pull people in. Collectors came more often, sales went up, and her small corner of the world started to shine. Yet in the middle of all the light, small shadows began to move. One night, after a late dinner, Lena returned home to find her front door slightly open. She froze. Nothing seemed out of place, except her mother's old locket, which used to sit on her bedside table, was now lying on the floor. Ethan arrived minutes later. He said he'd come to surprise her, bringing flowers. He claimed he must have left the door open by accident when he arrived. Lena wanted to believe him, and she did. But something about his calmness, his complete lack of worry, felt wrong. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her dreams were filled with that same lake again. Only this time, the man watching her was closer. In the morning, Ethan suggested a weekend getaway. Somewhere quiet. A place he called Hollow Lake. Lena didn't know why, but that name sent a chill through her spine. It sounded familiar. Still, she agreed. Because love makes you blind, and curiosity makes you foolish. The drive to Hollow Lake was long and hauntingly beautiful. Autumn trees bent over the road like they were whispering secrets. The lake house was isolated, too perfect, too still. The kind of place where silence feels alive. Inside, everything looked ready. Candles, wine, soft music. Ethan said he'd come there before, that it was a family property. But there were no family photos. No signs of anyone else. Just one locked room at the end of the hallway. Old storage, he said. That night, as they sat by the fire, Lena asked him if he believed in destiny. He smiled. "I believe in patterns," he said. "Some things repeat until you understand them." The words didn't make sense at the time, but they would. Soon. The first night at Hollow Lake was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that hums inside your bones. Lena woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Slow, careful, like someone didn't want to be heard. She called out Ethan's name. No answer. She stepped outside, but there was nothing. Only the lake, glowing faintly under a pale moon. The water looked alive, shifting and rippling though there was no wind. When she went back in, she found Ethan sitting by the fireplace. He looked startled, almost guilty. He said he couldn't sleep either. He said she must have imagined it. The next morning, she walked by the lake alone. The air was cold, damp, heavy. She noticed something odd. A wooden post half buried in the sand, marked with the letters AW. The initials meant nothing to her. But when she told Ethan, he froze for a split second before smiling it off. Probably a fisherman, he said. But that night, she heard the footsteps again. The next day, while Ethan went into town to get supplies, Lena explored the house. The locked room at the end of the hall caught her attention again. She pressed her ear against it. Silence. But when she tried the handle this time, it turned. Inside, the air was thick with dust and memory. There were old photographs on the wall, faces she didn't recognize. A man and a woman, smiling near a lake. And then, in the corner, a painting, half-finished, covered in cloth. When she lifted the sheet, her heart stopped. It was her painting, the same one Ethan had bought from her gallery. Only this one wasn't hers. It was older, cracked with age, and in the bottom corner, the initials AW were carved. Lena stumbled back. She didn't understand. How could this exist here, in a house she'd never been to? She looked closer at the photograph again. The woman in it. She looked eerily like Lena. Not identical, but close enough to be unsettling. When Ethan returned, she pretended nothing had happened. But something inside her had changed. Every time he smiled, she saw a shadow behind it. Every touch felt colder. That night, she found an old newspaper stuffed inside a drawer. The headline read, "Local artist Amelia Ward missing. Last seen near Hollow Lake." Lena's blood ran cold. Amelia Ward. She turned the page, and there it was. A picture of Amelia, and beside her, a man who looked exactly like Ethan. Only, the date on the paper was from 1998. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay beside Ethan, feeling his slow, steady breathing, wondering who, or what, she was really sleeping next to. The morning came, but the air felt different. Cold. Still, like the whole world was holding its breath. Lena moved quietly through the house. She found Ethan outside by the lake, staring into the water. His reflection shimmered, and for a split second, she thought she saw another face beside his, a woman's face. "You look pale," Ethan said softly. "Did you ever know someone named Amelia?" she asked. His smile froze, just for a heartbeat. "Why do you ask?" "Because she looked like me," Lena said. "Exactly like me." Ethan turned away. "You've been digging where you shouldn't, Lena." Her pulse spiked. There was something in his voice, low, steady, and dangerous. That night, Lena locked herself in the guest room. She searched online for Amelia Ward. There wasn't much, just that she disappeared mysteriously in 1998. The last person seen with her was a man named Ethan Rivers. But that couldn't be. Ethan was 32. How could he be the same man from 27 years ago? Then she noticed something in the old photo, the same watch on his wrist, the same scar near his jawline, the same eyes. She scrolled through Old Town records, desperate for an explanation. And there she found it, a story from the Hollow Lake archives. Local painter found dead in cabin fire. Suspect missing. The suspect's name, Ethan Rivers. But the fire had happened in 1902. Lena's breath caught. The wind outside began to howl. She turned off the laptop. Then a voice. Behind her. "Looking for ghosts, sweetheart." She spun around. Ethan was there, standing in the doorway, his face half lit by candlelight. His eyes no longer looked human. They looked old, like they'd seen centuries. "What are you?" she whispered. He stepped closer. "I was an artist once," he said softly. "Like you. I loved a woman named Amelia. She tried to leave me. I couldn't let her go." His voice cracked, part sorrow, part rage. "The night she tried to run, the house burned. I burned. But love doesn't die, Lena. It only changes faces. Lena's heart thundered. You killed her. He smiled faintly. No, I preserved her. In the water. In the paintings. She comes back, again and again. And this time, he reached out, tracing a finger along her cheek. You came back to me. Lena shoved him away and ran. The house seemed alive. Doors slamming, windows rattling, whispers rising from the walls. She burst outside, rain pouring, lightning flashing across the lake. Ethan followed, his voice echoing through the storm. You can't leave me again, Amelia. She stumbled into the water, struggling against the waves. The lake seemed to pull her down, dragging her toward the dark depths. Ethan reached for her hand, and for a moment, their eyes met. Let me go, she cried. Never, he whispered. Lightning struck the water, and everything went white. When the light faded, silence took over. The rain stopped. The lake was still. Lena opened her eyes. She was floating near the shore, trembling, gasping for breath. The world felt unreal, like waking from a nightmare that didn't want to end. The house stood behind her, dark and hollow, its reflection broken on the water. Ethan was gone, or so she thought. She dragged herself to the porch, every step heavy with fear. Inside, the air reeked of smoke and turpentine. The paintings, those haunting portraits, now looked different. Every single one had her face, and in each painting, she was drowning. Her hand shook as she stepped closer. That's when she noticed it. A new canvas, half-covered, still wet with paint. It showed her, standing by the lake, but behind her was Ethan, holding her like a shadow that refused to die. Then she heard it, the soft sound of humming. A melody, familiar yet ancient. Amelia. Lena turned. Ethan stood at the foot of the stairs. His clothes were burned, torn, his skin pale like ash. You can't escape destiny, he whispered. Every time you die, you find me again. She backed away, grabbing a rusted lantern from a table. You're not real. You're a curse. He smiled. Love is the oldest curse, Lena. The lantern's flame flickered in her trembling hand. Then let's end it. She hurled it across the room. The flame exploded against the canvas, fire spreading instantly, devouring the paintings, crawling up the walls. Ethan screamed, his voice echoing through every inch of the house, a sound not human, not mortal. You'll come back, he shouted. You always come back. Lena ran into the night as the house burned behind her, the fire roaring like vengeance itself. She fell to her knees near the lake, watching the flames consume the ghost of a man who refused to die. For the first time, the lake was quiet. Days later, the police found only ashes. No trace of Ethan, no trace of his body. But among the ruins, they found one thing, a single painting that survived the fire. It showed a woman standing alone, watching a burning house reflected in a lake. At the bottom, in faded red paint, were the words, "Till we meet again, Amelia." Months passed. Lena moved to a new city. She started painting again. But one night, as she closed her studio, she noticed something odd. On her latest canvas, one she hadn't finished, a faint outline had appeared. A man's face, watching her. Ethan. The lights flickered. The same melody began to hum in the background. She froze, whispering to herself. No, not again. Whispers rise, the brush strokes fade, and love becomes the ghost that never dies. Every love leaves a mark. Some never fade.